I'm Dr. Nathaniel Chin, and you're listening to Dementia Matters, a podcast about Alzheimer's disease. Dementia Matters is a production of the Wisconsin Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. Our goal is to educate listeners on the latest news in Alzheimer's disease research and caregiver strategies. Thanks for joining us. Welcome back to Dementia Matters. The Wisconsin Registry for Alzheimer's Prevention, also known as WRAP, is celebrating a monumental anniversary this year, turning 25 years old. With more than 1,700 individuals participating in the study since 2001, WRAP has allowed researchers to learn so much about the biological, health, and lifestyle factors that can affect Alzheimer's disease progression. In recent years, these participants' contributions have led to developments including validating blood biomarker tests used to help diagnose Alzheimer's disease, characterizing the biomarker course of individuals from preclinical Alzheimer's disease to mild cognitive impairment, and understanding the experience of individuals as they learn their amyloid and tau PET scan results. To commemorate the anniversary of the WRAP study, I'm joined by Drs. Mark Sager, Sterling Johnson, and Jessica Caldwell. Dr. Sager is the founder of the Wisconsin Alzheimer's Institute and the co-founder of WRAP. After leading WRAP and WAI for over 13 years, Dr. Sager retired in 2014 and was succeeded by Dr. Johnson. A returning guest on the podcast, Dr. Johnson has served as the leader of WRAP for 12 years, as well as the associate director of the Wisconsin Alzheimer's Disease Research Center and the Wisconsin Alzheimer's Institute, and the lead principal investigator of the Clarity study. As of last November, he is now transitioning to be a multi-principal investigator for the study, working alongside myself and our other returning guest, Dr. Jessica Caldwell. Dr. Caldwell is a board-certified neuropsychologist and now serves as the new multi-principal investigator of WRAP, as well as visiting associate professor in the Department of Neurology at UW-Madison. Mark, Sterling, Jessica, welcome to Dementia Matters.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to be here.
Mark, I'm going to start with you. My first question is, how did the WRAP study actually get started, and what were you hoping to do with it?
Well, it's hard to believe that it's been 25 years. I'm sure I've gotten younger in that period of time, but at 25 years ago, there was no Alzheimer's disease research at the University of Wisconsin, none. There was one professor in the School of Pharmacy doing some bench research, but there was nothing else. And I had started the Wisconsin Alzheimer's Institute a few years before, and I realized that the university needed an Alzheimer's disease research program. I was never an Alzheimer's disease researcher. I was a clinician. And so I was the last person that anybody would pick to start a program. And my wife and I were sitting outside in our patio an August afternoon, drinking a glass of wine, and we were discussing the need for an Alzheimer's disease program. And she said, you really ought to study me. And she was the daughter of someone with Alzheimer's disease. She was an adult child. And all of a sudden, it made sense. My criticism of current Alzheimer's disease research was that they were studying people with the disease and not people at risk of the disease. And so, as it turned out, that was her and my one good idea for a long time. The problem was I was alone. I was fortunate. You have to get lucky to do something like WRAP. And I was lucky to meet Dr. Bruce Herman, who was the head of neuropsychology. He and I had been working together in the memory assessment clinic at the UW, got to know each other. And so he became my partner. Right? So I had one faculty member partner and an institute with 5 FTE and no money. So how do you start WRAP? Well, you start WRAP with no money, but a good idea. And so Bruce and I put together a proposal for the Northwestern Mutual Life Foundation in Milwaukee. The proposal was for $500,000 a year for 5 years. We went to Milwaukee and we were lucky enough to get $50,000 for 2 years. So that's how WRAP got started. And we announced the awarding of the grant on a local television show, and that was on a Friday. And on Monday, we came into the office and we had received hundreds of calls.
Wow.
So we knew that we had made a mistake. And because one of the hardest things is obviously recruiting and for clinical research, and we were recruiting hundreds at 2 days after an announcement, and that's the way it's always gone.
Wow.
So that's how it started.
We should thank your wife then. So if she's listening, we appreciate that glass of
Purpose
wine.
purpose really was to create a research program for the UW, and I think it's worked out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think more than thousands of people would agree with you there, Mark. My next question's for you and for Sterling, so whoever wants to go first can. But what did the field of Alzheimer's and related dementias research look like when RAP started in 2001? And Mark, of course, I want to know at your time when you were starting it, and Sterling, you were still in the field around then too. And what were the gaps though that RAP was really meant to fill?
Yeah, I can say a few words on that. I joined the study when I got here in 2002, and I remember interviewing, and Mark said, well, this was April in 2002, probably. He said, we need someone to image this cohort that we're building. There's, at the time, probably 100, there's 100 people in this cohort or some number like that. Um, and that was the mindset at the time. We could do MRI imaging, we could do fMRI, we could study pre-symptomatic people, and that was the mindset that I was bringing to this, and that's what we had in common. But at the time, we had no biomarkers. We had zero biomarkers that actually index the biology of Alzheimer's disease. So it was back in those days. We were doing whatever we could to try to understand the natural history and the risk associated with family history. But as Mark said, we were largely studying symptomatic disease at the time, and RAP was really groundbreaking in that
Yeah.
respect.
And the criticism of RAP at the time was that we were studying a population that was too young, that we would never find anything. You're wasting your time. And quite honestly, as Sterling said, we were primitive. I mean, the neural imaging was primitive. We were, I mean, it was primitive. And I think that and Sterling should comment, there's one thing I did that may have been right. I realized that we were primitive, but I started preparing for the future. And you started collecting biological samples, and so we had biological samples that had been collected over years that could be analyzed when the technology caught up. And I remember, it's funding something like 17 MRIs. And then Sterling changed the machine, destroyed all that data. But that's just what happens when you do a longitudinal study. And thank God for Sterling.
We were flying blind, and I think the criticism was somewhat true because there really wasn't much we could detect back then. We were looking at family history, we were looking at ApoE, we were finding little bits of things, but not really much cognitive wise because the cohort was still very young. They were in their late 50s at the time. But thanks to Mark, and thanks for deciding to collect the blood way back when, and making that happen. When we were able to start analyzing biomarkers, PET scans, and then the blood, all of that all of a sudden became very clear. And we could see how early this disease began. And we could then start associating that to the lifestyle factors and other health factors. And all of a sudden, things started to click.
But it took time. And I mean, every renewal, I knew I was at risk because we had nothing to publish. And that was the big criticism. But it has moved on, and I think Sterling's hire was key. Sanjay Asthana coming to the university was key. There were a whole host of things that came together over time, not immediately, but over time, that I think has led to the ADRC and the success at the university.
Talking about change, though, a part of that during your time leading WAI and the RAP study, there was this major development in expanding the program to open in La Crosse as well as the WAI regional Milwaukee office. So, Mark, can you talk about why this expansion was so important and why La Crosse and Milwaukee were chosen in particular?
Sure, we needed diversity, and we needed to get out of Dane County and the environment in Dane County. I mean, the volunteers were wonderful, but we needed diversity. We especially needed African American members from the African American community, and so we set up a program at Sinai in Milwaukee. We also tried to develop a program that would help recruit Hispanics into the program, into REP. That was funded again, not by the medical student school. It was funded by with private money. And I can tell you, it's extraordinarily difficult to develop programs in an environment where research is not usual. You need scientists, you need research specialists, you need a whole host of people to make a project go. The other problem that we had, especially in Milwaukee, is that no one in Madison, Wisconsin, knew anything about Milwaukee. And we hired people, and they weren't scientists, they weren't involved in the community. And it wasn't until we hired a woman named Gina Green Harris that it took off. And Gina has led that, and Sterling has followed through. And I think been a success. I think finally we're beginning to increase the numbers of African Americans and people of diverse populations.
And Mark, we've had Gina on the podcast before, and we'll link to her episode in our show notes. But community-based research really was fundamental to all of this, and we've learned that through your work and especially Gina's work. Now, Sterling, when you became the PI of RAP, you were already familiar with the incredible participants, the data set that was created. So, what was your initial vision, and in particular, what was your first big project that when you took over that was your project?
Well, the main thing I wanted to do was just not break it. I wanted to take what was happening and keep it going, and that's the cardinal rule of a longitudinal study. But it's also a testament to what Mark built. It was a thriving study. The team was committed. There's a lot of mission engagement and just a sense of purpose among everybody on the team. So that's fundamentally what I tried to perpetuate, and then what I gradually just began doing, because one thing I like to do is just connect people and connect different interests to the study. And so I started doing more and more of that as our data became more and more valuable, as we got more biomarkers, more imaging, and we developed a repository of imaging that we started sharing. We started sharing the blood biomarkers and everything else. And so with that, all of a sudden we became very valuable to many interests, collaborators across the world, industry partners, and academic partners. And I think that's been something that's been really helpful to RAP and really helped to raise the visibility of the study internationally.
Sterling, you were an early adopter of PET imaging, the push to have more images of our participants in RAP. Um, was it? Can you recall a decision point where you had to go all in and invest in this, or find something else? Do you recall that time, or did it just come sort of naturally that this was the direction that RAP was going to head?
That was in 2008, when Brad Christian, who's the lead of our PET imaging program, when he came here. It was a couple years after the first amyloid imaging papers were coming out, and we could the change in the way we can do research was just really obvious. To go from group level bar charts and things like that to now individual level depictions on the image. You can actually see the proteinopathy show up in a single person. And that was a real light bulb moment for me. And so with Brad and with the generosity of Pittsburgh, Bill Klunk and Chet Mathis, we got the Pittsburgh Compound B um, radio tracer here. I was the first one to have that radio tracer in Wisconsin, and we went from there. And now we've got over that couple thousand, several thousand of these amyloid scans and also tau scans.
We highlighted a few findings in the introduction, but how has RAP impacted what we understand about Alzheimer's disease? What studies have RAP participants contributed to that you think are worth noting?
Sterling, you're going to have to answer that.
Well, I think again the biomarkers really elucidated a lot of things for us and helped us first of all see that the proteinopathy does indeed begin in late midlife. The average age of onset of amyloid in RAP was about 62, but it can be as early as mid 40s, and it can go as late as our 80s. So that was something hugely important. And then with Rebecca Langhow and Toby Bedhauser, they were able to show that we could pinpoint in an individual person an approximate age. Pinpoint's the wrong word, but they could approximate when their amyloid became abnormal at a person level. So we could associate a particular age with the onset of Alzheimer's disease. And then we could look and see from there, from that anchor point, does this person exhibit resilience? Do they exhibit susceptibility to decline? And now we could bring in all those factors that RAP studies so well that Mark put in place, whether that's the different health histories that we get, the women's health history, medical health history, um, uh, medications, lifestyle factors, all the genetics that other investigators, Karine Engelman, brought into the study. We were able to integrate all of that once we could anchor the disease to a particular age, and that's been very, I think, very fruitful, not only for us but for the field.
May I ask a question? And this is of both Jessica and Sterling. And when we started out, the concept that, or the thought that Alzheimer's disease would be preventable was just, it was a joke. Has that changed? And do you think RAP has in any way contributed to that?
I think that's changed. And, the opportunities that we have today and that the field has given us in terms of where we're on the precipice of, it's a whole different field at this point. When we say prevention, whether we're talking about primary prevention and really keeping folks from ever having Alzheimer's proteins in their brain, or we're talking about medications for secondary prevention, where you're taking the proteins out and preventing some symptoms from ever happening. Those are here, those are coming, and I think RAP is this type of study that really can speak to how to do that best, who should have what kind of treatment to lead to a preventative outcome that's great for that person. It's amazing.
It is amazing.
Sterling, if you don't have to answer that. I mean, Jessica gave a wonderful one, but if you
You
have
did,
anything you
yeah.
want to add, you
I think
can.
it's and you know, Nate, you can answer some of these as well, but because you know the study very well as its medical director. But I think the field is poised for actual prevention, secondary prevention, and primary prevention, and I think RAP is going to be able to lead the way in many respects. What do you think, Nate?
Oh, well, no, I completely agree. I guess I'm more struck by the fact that when RAP was formed and you put the word prevention in the name of the study, it was thought of as not feasible and a joke. And so, Mark, that seems bold of you to do something like that.
Well, it was ignorance. That's what it was. If I had known what I know now, maybe I wouldn't have done it. The other issue, where did I was thinking today, where did the title rap come from? It came from a psychiatrist from Platteville. And a psychiatrist in Platteville had visited Bruce Herman and I in the memory clinic, and I'd taken her out to dinner or lunch actually, and I said, "We're doing this study, and we're trying to figure out what to call it." And she said the Wisconsin Registry for Alzheimer's Prevention. So rap didn't come from me. It didn't come from anybody at the university. It came from someone in rural Wisconsin.
I think that's very fitting, Mark. That
It
sounds
is. It
I
is.
yeah.
did not know that. That's wonderful.
Uh, well, Mark, while you're here and talking, I want to direct my next question to you, and Sterling, do add afterwards. What are you most proud of when you reflect on your time with RAP? What comes to mind?
Mm. Uh, I don't know. It's very. Let me think.
Yeah, you take your time, Sterling.
Yeah.
Not that you're leaving Sterling, but as we make this transition to Jessica leading rep, what do you reflect on and think, this was just such a great contribution, or I'm very proud of this.
Well, I know now after leading it for 12 years what Mark is feeling a little bit. There's just so much blood, sweat, and tears that goes into keeping something like this afloat. And boy, what a legacy, Mark, to bring this study into
Mm,
existence and to
mm,
get it into a thriving place. The uh, I think that Mark really built something incredible, and the vision. He says luck, and uh, I think luck is also just positioning yourself for those things, and I think you did that so well.
mm.
But what you built has just been phenomenal.
I would say that after thinking a little bit, I don't always think very well, but I think that what I'm proud of is the existing program. I think the existing program probably would not be here without REP, and I mean that. And Sanjay would not have come. There wouldn't have been, this an ADRC. Remember uh, Ron Peterson from Mayo's approaching me, and he said, "Mark, I've never seen a site that's evolved so quickly." And it was because of Brad, and it was because of Sanjay and a lot of people who worked hard to make it happen. So that's what I'm proud of.
Nice. And you mentioned blood, sweat, and tears, and you mentioned the adaptability, and I think that speaks to our RAP participants in the
That's
Wisconsin
exactly
Madison.
right.
We have a good group of people. Jessica, now as someone new to RAP, but certainly not new to the field, what struck you about RAP when you considered the position?
Well, first of all, I just want to say I was incredibly honored to be considered for the position, just with the entire program that's been built here and how impressive it is. At the time I was being considered, I was working with women in a clinic I developed to help them change their behavior to potentially reduce dementia risks. And what I saw was that women said, what do I need to do? How much of it do I need to do? Should I get a blood test? Is there a medication? And if there is, should I take it? Should my mom take it? And all of these types of questions, in order to answer true prevention, I knew what you needed was much more data than that. You needed comprehensive assessment of people starting at points in their life that we know are important for risk, midlife. And you also needed to repeat that assessment and get lifestyle information, get cognitive information, biomarkers, the full package, and follow those people for decades. And RAP was that study. And so just being able to come in and have the potential to build on everything that's been done here was just such a prospect to me. It was so exciting. And I will say, too, there were two other things that struck me when I visited the RAP study. And one was Sterling's commitment to collaboration and data sharing. I strongly believe that if we are solving questions that are this big, preventing Alzheimer's disease. It's going to take multiple perspectives, multiple types of expertise all coming together. And so I knew this was a place where I could make a contribution in that way. And then finally, what I'll say really struck me was my conversations with the folks that actually work with our RAP participants during scheduling or cognitive testing. I asked them why they stay with the study. And without exception, everyone said, I believe in the mission of the study and I'm committed to these participants. And so I think it's one thing to have a team that's just stellar in what they do, but it's a whole nother level to have a team that believes in that larger mission, and RAP really has that. So it's very unique in that way.
Yeah, that mission, the idea of a movement, you hear that from our participants too. And I'll say that when I go around and I give community talks, sure enough, there's someone who'll stand up or ask a question or approach me afterwards very proudly saying, "Oh, I'm a RAP participant." And they state that very confidently and with such pride. And I think that speaks to the culture that Mark started, that Sterling's continued, and Jessica, clearly you embody as well. Jessica, you've been here for over a year now, or coming up on that. I think it's a little bit over. What have you come to learn about RAP, the staff, the participants, the organization? What are the things that you want to share with those who are listening and thinking about RAP, not necessarily to participate, but just to get a better sense of what this place is?
Well, I think we've touched on a bit of what I've learned and continued to see over time with the participants, like you just said, Nate, really believing in the mission as well, and knowing that they might not be participating for 20 years or more for themselves, but really for this broader community and worldwide benefit of finding a way to prevent the disease. It's really incredible. A couple of other things that I've learned really are that our staff are incredible problem solvers. I just want to share one quick example, which is in the last few weeks, we've had something come up that meant the rooms where we usually see our participants were unavailable, not just for a couple of days, for months projected into the future. And within a couple of days, our staff had not only identified the issue and brought it to us as leadership, but also solved the whole problem. It's really just that combination of quick thinking and dedication to the participants that I'm consistently amazed by. And one other kind of atypical thing, or maybe a little bit less typically noticed thing, I think, is I've seen in our scientists on the team that they really care, not just about the study, and they're not just brilliant scientists who can put together the data analytics, but really they care about making sure the next generation of scientists can do what they do and then even do other things. The mentorship or the training that I've seen from our scientists who are postdoctoral fellows has also been a really remarkable thing.
And so, Jessica, we've talked about the start of RAP, what's happened, the progression within RAP. What's next for the RAP study, and how do you hope it grows and develops in the next 5 or 10 or 15 years?
Well, I guess I'm just going to start out by echoing what Sterling felt when he first joined, which is I want to maintain the study. I don't want to break anything. I would love to continue to see RAP build and maintain and continue to push the forefront of biomarker identification, not just for what we have today, but for following people after they get treatments, for other types of co-pathology. Really helping to be a part of building that is something I want to continue, support that continuing. But for me, what's next with RAP is making prevention an action and an opportunity for our participants. When I say that, I'm talking about everything from having an opportunity for folks who are eligible to be participating in clinical trials for medications for Alzheimer's disease protein removal from the brain, or participating in studies where individuals learn how to change behavior to maximize brain health. So exercise, nutrition, sleep changes. And with this type of change, what I hope to do in the next 5 years is really to gradually build in and build around the RAP study a means to get this done. So start small, but over time, really get to a point where research studies are offered for whatever participants in RAP might want to participate in those interventions.
For my last question, before I ask it, one of the things I'm struck by as I look at the screen and I see the leadership of RAP, Bruce isn't with us right now, but Bruce Herman too would fit this. I'm looking at clinician scientists. I'm looking at clinicians, people who have trained and interact with patients. I'm looking at scientists who, who talk a lot about data and care a great deal about data. And it strikes me as one of the greatest strengths and foundation of the RAP study is this bridge between the science and clinical care. And that's certainly where our field is right now. Um, and of course, that's one of the things I'm proud of is that this is a very person-centered, clinically focused scientific organization. But for all of you, and I want each of you to answer this question, and maybe I'll start with you, Mark. What gives you hope when you think about Alzheimer's research and care?
Well, obviously, the technology has advanced dramatically over the last 25 years, and I think that's going to continue. I think as Sterling has pointed out, the biomarkers 25 years ago were we knew nothing, and I think we're going to learn more. And if I had another 25 years, I would probably begin to look for alternative pathways. And what those pathways are, Jessica and Sterling got to figure that out. But I do think that's one area where we've been deficient. We've been focused on amyloid for so long, and I would that's where I would hope we would continue to show progress, but at the same time begin to look in different directions.
And how about you, Sterling?
I agree with that, and I think some of that is already starting to bear out, Mark, with looking at alpha-synuclein in the CSF that we started to collect, and we're actually starting to see that there are signs of alpha-synuclein in some people. And for those listening, that's the protein involved in Lewy body disease and Parkinson's disease. We certainly see vascular as well. But what excites me about where we've come over the last 25 years and where we're going um, is, first of all, now I think we're in a place with you, Jessica, and you, Nate, and the prevention mindset that you bring, that we are going to be we're going to be able to actually do some prevention, and that's something our participants want. And that's the other thing that I remain really hopeful about, is that our participants, hopeful and grateful, our participants are engaged. They're in it for the long haul. They inspire me. I know they inspire all of you, and they're why we get up in the morning and do this study. And so I think they're gonna keep the study going. The participants are they're the secret sauce that makes all this work.
And Jessica?
I totally agree with both of those responses. And just something a little different I'll add is that it makes me hopeful that the conversation about Alzheimer's has changed, so that we're talking about this on a podcast and people are saying the word Alzheimer's at home. They're talking about it with their families. It's not just grants from the government who are, thinking about supporting Alzheimer's research, but all different types of philanthropists are thinking, how can I help to change the game when it comes to Alzheimer's? And again, I think in order for us to push this forward, that broad conversation, so that we have our community engaged and anyone who could potentially fund the research engaged, we're there. And I think that it's just a really hopeful time in order to be able to say, we're at the table, let's move things forward.
What a wonderful way to end. I want to thank all of you for being on Dementia Matters today. Mark, I want to do a special thanks for you for coming out of retirement to join our academic podcast here. So thank you. And certainly we'll have much more to share as RAP moves forward, as the field moves forward. But I appreciate taking the time to reflect on where RAP has been and where it's heading. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nate.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Dementia Matters. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen, or tell your smart speaker to play the Dementia Matters podcast. Please rate us on your favorite podcast app. It helps others find our show and lets us know how we're doing. If you enjoy our show and want to support our work, consider making a gift to the Dementia Matters Fund through the UW Initiative to End Alzheimer's. All donations go towards outreach and production. Donate at the link in the description. Dementia Matters is brought to you by the Wisconsin Alzheimer's Disease Research Center at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. It receives funding from private, university, state, and national sources, including a grant from the National Institutes on Aging for Alzheimer's Disease Research Centers. This episode of Dementia Matters was produced by Caitlin Rowerdink and edited by Eli Gadbury. Our musical jingle is Cases to Rest by Blue Dot Sessions. To learn more about the Wisconsin Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, check out our website at adrc.wisc.edu and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and X. If you have any questions or comments, email us at dementiamatters@medicine.wisc.edu. Thanks for listening.